Welcome to another enthralling episode of Witch Hunt. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
And I'm Sarah Jack. We're so thrilled you have joined us for the third part of our Salem Witch-Hunt 101 series.
In this episode, we'll tell you the story of the first arrests and interrogations in late February and early March 1692.
Let's get right to the story.
The road from Salem Village to Salem Town, February 29th, 1692. 4 village men ride hellbent for town. For 6 weeks, mysterious afflictions have baffled their community, and now the cause is finally known. 3 witches, Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osburn, have bewitched 4 girls: Betty Parris, Abigail Williams, Elizabeth Hubbard, and Ann Putnam Jr.
The men represent both sides of the conflict over the minister. Joseph Hutchinson is a member of the village committee, but not a member of the village church, led by Samuel Parris. Thomas Preston is the husband of Rebecca Nurse's daughter, also Rebecca. Like Hutchinson, Preston is not a member of the village church. Sergeant Thomas Putnam Jr. is the father of the afflicted Ann Jr. and an ardent supporter of Minister Samuel Parris. His brother Edward is a deacon of Parris's church.
Cold rain pelts the men as their horses do their best on the muddy road. As they reach the edge of town, a mounted man watches from the corner of the first intersection. He turns his horse and rides up alongside the men.
"What's the hurry?" he asks. Up close, the 4 men see that it is Jonathan Baker.
"There's witchcraft in the village, Jonathan," Thomas Putnam says. "We need to see the magistrates."
"Sure, Thomas," Jonathan says. "They should be at the townhouse. I'll lead the way."
"What about your watch?"
"I'll be back to my patrol in no time." Taking his horse to the front of the group, he charges ahead along the familiar roads to the townhouse, calling out, "Make way!"
As they reach the townhouse, Jonathan Baker dismounts, ties up his horse, and hurries to the door. The 4 village men trail behind, parking their horses and rushing in after him.
They quietly pass the schoolroom and head upstairs to the courtroom.
When they enter, the watchman is already standing at the bar, conferring with magistrates Jonathan Corwin and John Hathorne.
The 4 sopping wet men doff their hats and line up behind equally wet Jonathan Baker.
"Witches?" Hathorne asked Jonathan.
"That's what they told me."
"Well, stand aside and let them speak."
"Who among you can tell us about this witch business?"
"I shall," Thomas Putnam says.
"Then let's have it."
"Your Honor, my daughter and 3 other girls in the village have been bewitched, and they have told us the names of those who afflict them."
"How do you know they are bewitched?"
"They have been visited by the specters of 3 women.
"Who?"
Their names are Sarah Good, Sarah Osburn, and Tituba."
"I don't know them."
"Tituba is Mr. Parris's enslaved servant. Sarah Good is a poor woman with 2 small children and a no-good husband. And Sarah Osburn is a scandalous woman who has not been to church in more than a year."
"What else have you done to help these afflicted girls?"
"We have tried prayer, fasting, and physic, but the doctor says they are under an evil hand."
"When did this all start?"
"The afflictions began in January with the minister's niece and daughter, but spread to my daughter and the doctor's niece last week."
"If you 4 men will swear out the complaints, we will issue warrants."
"Thank you, Your Honor."
In the complaints, the men allege that the 3 witchcraft suspects have done much injury to their 4 young victims through witchcraft.
In response to the complaints, magistrates John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin issue warrants for the arrests of the 3 women.
The constables must deliver the women to Ingersoll's Ordinary, a tavern in Salem Village, by 10 o'clock the next morning, March 1st.
"Baker," Hathorne says to the watchman, "dispatch these warrants to Constables Locker and Herrick immediately."
Jonathan Baker takes the papers from the magistrate, carefully tucks them in his bag, and leaves the room.
"We'll see this through to the end," Hathorne says to the 4 village men still standing at the bar.
"Thank you," the men say.
"Something dreadful is happening in Salem. Go home and see to the safety of your family and neighbors."
The men turn and leave.
Elsewhere in Salem, Jonathan Baker goes to the home of Captain George Locker, a constable, and hands him the warrant for Sarah Good.
In Beverly, Jonathan visits Constable Joseph Herrick Sr. and gives him the warrant for Sarah Osburn and Tituba.
In the morning, Constable George Locker arrests Sarah Good, and Constable Joseph Herrick arrests Sarah Osburn and Tituba.
The constables meet at Ingersoll's with their prisoners in tow and find that a massive crowd has poured into the center of the village, filling the tavern and the street outside.
There's a commotion in the crowd, and Hathorne and Corwin squeeze through.
"We have to go to the meeting house," Hathorne says to the constables. "But secure the prisoners in rooms in the tavern first. Clear everyone else out if you need to. We'll call for the women when it's time, but have Ingersoll's wife inspect them for witches' marks first."
Why don't we send the crowds home? Locker asks.
"There are too many of them for us to manage," Hathorne says.
Have the captain call up the trained men to help, Eric says.
"No, let's give the people the show they want," Hathorne says.
You sure about this, John? Corwin asks.
"Absolutely," Hathorne says. "Herrick, see that the prisoners are secured and then join us. Everyone else with me. We must hurry before the people realize what's happening."
Hathorne leads them into the meeting house, trailed by the afflicted girls and their families. Most of the crowd lags behind, but a few of the younger men charge ahead.
The magistrates, rather than question the suspects privately, have decided to give the crowd a show. The afflicted children follow them into the meeting house, wailing and moaning the entire walk over, escorted by their mothers or aunts. The men in their lives have broken off to speak with the magistrates.
Magistrate John Hathorne is the son of local legend William Hathorne, a military leader and merchant. Born into wealth, John has followed in his father's footsteps as a merchant and pursued a second career in politics, serving as assistant, which is a member of the upper house of the colonial general court.
John's great-grandson Nathaniel, who will never know him, will add a W to the name, making it Hawthorne, and will famously write several stories and a novel, The House of the Seven Gables, based upon the events and legacy of the witch hunt.
Jonathan Corwin is also a merchant and an assistant. He is the son of George and Elizabeth Corwin. His brother John married into the powerful Winthrop family. He is the husband of Margaret, the daughter of John Winthrop Jr., governor of the Connecticut colony until his death in 1679.
Margaret's brother Waitstill Winthrop is a leader in the Massachusetts Bay Colony and will serve on the witch trial court with Jonathan, while John and Margaret's son George Corwin will become sheriff of Essex County in May 1692 and serve throughout the trials, earning notoriety for seizing some property of witchcraft suspects.
Inside as outside, the meeting house is entirely unadorned. Scant light slants in through small windows.
The men gather around the pulpit. John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin are accompanied by Minister Samuel Parris of Salem Village, Ministers John Higginson Sr. and Nicholas Noyes of Salem Town, Marshal George Herrick, Sergeant Thomas Putnam, local tailor Ezekiel Cheever, and physician William Griggs.
Hathorne says, "Right, let's get things in order here. Can we get a table and some chairs?"
Samuel Parris says, "We keep a table and chairs in the back corner, but I can run over to Ingersoll's and have more furniture carried over."
Hathorne says, "All right, then who can record the examinations?"
As Parris exits the meeting house, Thomas Putnam says, "Ezekiel Cheever here has the finest penmanship in the village."
Hathorne says, "Well then, he has the job."
Ezekiel Cheever says, "Thank you, Your Excellency."
Hathorne says, "Marshal, have your men bring the accused in here and set them up behind the pulpit."
"Yes, sir," Marshal Herrick says. He turns and quickly strides to the door and throws it open.
The door remains open after he exits, and Samuel Parris enters, followed by John Indian and Benjamin Hutchinson, carrying a large rectangular table. A group of men trails behind carrying chairs. Thomas Putnam and Ezekiel Cheever grab the other table from the back corner of the meeting house, and Nicholas Noyes collects the chair.
Hathorne directs the men to set up tables and chairs to either side of the pulpit.
Once everything is set, Hathorne and Corwin take seats at the table to the pulpit's right.
Ezekiel Cheever and the ministers sit at the other table.
Hathorne says, "Putnam, Briggs, go ahead and bring the afflicted girls up here. They can stand behind the prisoner before the pews. You others help them. Get them up here before the crowd floods in."
Thomas and the other men return to the entrance, where Thomas's brother, Deacon Edward Putnam, stands with his and Thomas's families. Nearby, Elizabeth Hubbard stands with her aunt, Rachel Griggs. Elizabeth Parris sits on a bench, while Betty and Abigail crawl on the floor, purring.
Thomas addresses the collected assembly. "It's time to go up there. They are expecting the 4 girls up front. The rest of us will have to sit in the front pews behind them."
Thomas takes Ann Jr. by the hand and leads the group forward.
While they proceed, the door bursts open, and the crowd rushes in.
"It'll be okay, Anne," Thomas says, hurrying to the front as dozens, then hundreds, crowd their way through the door.
He leads her to the front space, between the pews and the table that serves as the court's bar. "You'll be fine, Anne," he says. "God is here." The sound of the crowd is deafening. Thomas wonders if Anne hears him.
"Thank you," she says, looking dazed. A tear squeezes out of her eye, and Thomas wipes it from her cheek.
He squeezes her arm and releases her. She stands facing the magistrates as he takes a seat in the center of the front row, where his brother joins him.
William Griggs leads his niece Elizabeth Hubbard to Anne's side, leaves her, and sits by Thomas and Edward Putnam.
Samuel Parris brings up Betty Parris and Abigail Williams.
He then finds a seat at the table with the other ministers. Elizabeth Parris sits in her own front pew, waiting for the other women to join her.
The masses of people in the room stare at the girls up front, burning holes in the backs of their heads. Those seated off to the side are able to get an angle on the girls' faces, contorted in terror.
John Hathorne pounds the table.
"Quiet," Jonathan Corwin says. "Quiet."
Marshal Herrick bangs the wooden floor with his staff of office, sending a series of thuds through the building like waves.
Eventually, the noise of the crowd abates, and people take their seats in the pews. Every seat is filled, including up in the gallery.
The meeting house is standing room only, and dozens sit in the aisles. More onlookers peer in through the small windows, darkening the room as if night has fallen early.
Marshal Herrick enters the room, carrying his staff of office. Behind him, Constables Locker and Herrick walk a reluctant Sarah Good to the front of the room, passing the afflicted girls, who swoon as Sarah goes by.
Following behind, other men escort Sarah Osburn and Tituba. They take them behind the pulpit and encircle them.
Constables Locker and Herrick stand Sarah Good before the table where Hathorne and Corwin sit, and then they step aside a little and flank her.
The marshal takes a post behind the magistrates, facing Sarah and the crowd behind her. The girls wail in spasm.
Hathorne says, "Marshal, was this woman examined by Hannah Ingersoll?"
"Yes, sir," Marshal Herrick says. "She and the other two were clean."
Unexpected, but not unusual, the devil hides his marks carefully.
John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin hold quills above paper, prepared to take their own notes, in addition to the official record kept by Ezekiel Cheever. In the audience, Joseph Putnam records his own version of events. Hathorne opens up the questioning.
"Sarah Good, what evil spirit have you familiarity with?
"None."
Have you made no contract with the devil?
"No."
Why do you hurt these children?
"I do not hurt them, I scorn it."
Who do you employ then to do it?
"I employ nobody."
What creature do you employ then?
"No creature, but I am falsely accused."
Why did you go away muttering from Mr. Parris's house?
"I did not mutter, but I thanked him for what he gave my child."
Have you made no contract with the devil?
"No."
Hathorne desires the children, all of them, to look upon her and see if this is the person that has hurt them. And so they all do look upon her and say, "This is one of the persons that does torment us." Presently, they are all tormented.
Betty Parris falls to the floor, landing hard. She convulses. "The specter of Sarah Good does this," Abigail says. Ann Putnam Jr. twists and flails. Elizabeth Hubbard screams.
"Sarah Good, do you not see now what you have done? Why do you not tell us the truth? Why do you thus torment these poor children?"
"I do not torment them."
"Who do you employ then?"
"I employ nobody. I scorn it."
"How came they thus tormented?"
"What do I know? You bring others here, and now you charge me with it?"
"Why, who was it?"
"I do not know, but it was some you brought into the meeting house with you."
"We brought you into the meeting house."
"But you brought in two more."
"Who was it then that tormented the children?"
"It was Osburn."
"What is it that you say when you go muttering away from persons' houses?"
"If I must tell, I will tell."
"You tell us then."
"If I must tell, I will tell. It is the commandments. I may say my commandments, I hope."
"What commandment is it?"
"If I must tell you, I will tell. It is a psalm."
"What psalm?"
After a long time, she muttered over some part of a psalm.
"Who do you serve?"
"I serve God,
"What God do you serve?"
the God that made heaven and earth."
Her answers were in a very wicked, spiteful manner, reflecting and retorting against the authority with base and abusive words, and many lies she was taken in.
It was here said that her husband had said that he was afraid that she either was a witch or would be one very quickly.
William Good, why do you say your wife is a witch or will be one very quickly?
She is not in this nature, but it is her bad carriage to me, and indeed, I may say with tears that she is an enemy to all good.
The magistrates talk in hushed tones for a moment.
Then John Hathorne says, "We are committing this woman to their Majesty's jail in Ipswich. Constables, return her to Ingersoll's and get chains on her, and bring us Goody Osburn."
The constables escort Sarah Good away, and the marshal signals to the men behind the pulpit. A moment later, 2 men escort Sarah Osburn to the bar. They release her, but stand close at hand. The marshal again takes his position behind the magistrates.
John Hathorne scowls at Sarah Osburn.
What evil spirit have you familiarity with?
None?
Have you made no contract with the devil?
No, I never saw the devil in my life.
Why do you hurt these children?
I do not hurt them.
Who do you employ then to hurt them?
I employ nobody.
What familiarity have you with Sarah Good?
None. I have not seen her these 2 years.
Where did you see her then?
One day, a-going to town.
What communications had you with her?
I had none, only, "How do you do?" or so. I did not know her by name.
What did you call her?
I called her Sarah.
Sarah Good saith it was you that hurt the children.
I do not know that the devil goes about in my likeness to do any hurt.
Mr. Hathorne desired all the children to stand up and look upon her and see if they did know her, which they all did, and every one of them said that this was one of the women that did afflict them, and that they had constantly seen her in the very habit that she was now in. Their evidence do stand that she said this morning that she was more like to be bewitched than that she was a witch.
Mr. Hathorne asks her what makes her say so. She answers that she was frightened one time in her sleep and either saw or dreamed that she saw a thing like an Indian all black, which did pinch her in her neck and pulled her by the back part of her head to the door of the house.
Did you never see anything else?
No.
It was said by some in the meeting house that she had said that she would never be tied to that spirit anymore. What lying spirit is this? Hath the devil ever deceived you and been false to you?
I do not know the devil. I never did see him.
What lying spirit was it then?
It was a voice that I thought I heard,
What did it propound to you?
that I should go no more to meeting, but I said I would, and did go the next Sabbath day.
Were you never tempted further?
No.
Why did you yield thus far to the devil as never to go to meeting since?
Alas, I've been sick and not able to go.
Here her husband and others say that she has not been at meeting this year and 2 months.
John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin turn to each other and nod.
Hathorne says, We commit this to their Majesty's jail in Salem. Return her to Ingersoll's until we are finished here and bring up this Tituba.
Marshal Herrick gestures to the men guarding Tituba, and they walk her before the bar.
The afflicted girls gasp and convulse as Tituba passes.
The guards stand to her sides as Tituba faces the magistrates. Hathorne begins the interrogation.
Tituba, what evil spirit have you familiarity with?
None.
Why do you hurt these children?
I do not hurt them.
Who is it then?
The devil, for aught I know.
Did you never see the devil?
The devil came to me and bid me serve him.
Who have you seen?
4 women, and sometimes they hurt the children.
Who were they?
Goody Osburn and Sarah Good, and I do not know who the others were. Sarah Good and Osburn would have me hurt the children, but I would not. I did also see a tall man of Boston.
When did you see them?
Last night at Boston.
What did they say to you?
They said hurt the children.
And did you hurt them?
No. There is 4 women and 1 man. They hurt the children, and then they lay all upon me, and they tell me if I will not hurt the children, they will hurt me.
But did you not hurt them?
Yes, but I will hurt them no more.
Are you not sorry that you did hurt them?
Yes.
And why then do you hurt them?
They say hurt children, or we will do worse to you.
What have you seen?
A man came to me and said, serve me.
What service?
Hurt the children, And last night there was an appearance that said, 'Kill the children,' and if I would not go on hurting the children, they would do worse to me."
What is this appearance you see?
"Sometimes it is like a hog and sometimes like a great dog. This appearance I did see 4 times.
What did it say to you?
It is the black dog that said, 'Serve me,' but I said, 'I am afraid.' He said if I did not, he would do worse to me.
What did you say to it?
'I will serve you no longer.' Then he said he would hurt me, and then he looked like a man and threatened to hurt me. This man had a yellow bird that he kept with him, and he told me he had more pretty things that he would give me if I would serve him.
What were those pretty things?
He did not show them to me.
What else have you seen?
2 cats, a red cat and a black cat.
What did they say to you?
'Serve me.'
When did you see them last?
Last night, and they said, 'Serve me,' but I said I would not.
What service?
She said, 'Hurt the children.'
Did you not pinch Elizabeth Hubbard this morning?
The man brought her to me and made me pinch her.
Why did you go to Thomas Putnam's last night and hurt his child?
They pull and haul me and make me go.
And what would they have you do? Kill her with a knife?
Lieutenant Fuller and the others say when the child saw these persons and was tormented by them, she did complain of a knife, that they would have her cut her head off with a knife.
How did you go?
We ride upon sticks and are there presently.
Do you go through the trees or over them?
We see nothing, but we are there presently.
Why did you not tell your master?
I was afraid. They said they would cut off my head if I told.
Would you not have hurt others if you could?
They said that they would hurt others, but they could not.
What attendance hath Sarah Good?
A yellow bird, and she would have given me one.
What meat did she give it?
It did suck her between her fingers.
Did not you hurt Mr. Corwin's child?
Goody Good and Goody Osburn told that they did hurt Mr. Corwin's child and would have had me hurt him too, but I did not.
What hath Sarah Osburn?
Yesterday she had a thing with a head like a woman, with legs and wings.
What else have you seen with Goody Osburn?
Another thing hairy. It goes upright like a man. It hath only 2 legs.
Did you not see Sarah Good upon Elizabeth Hubbard last Saturday?
I did see her set a wolf upon her to afflict her.
The persons with this maid did say that she did complain of a wolf.
I also saw a cat with Good at another time.
What clothes doth the man go in?
He goes in black clothes, a tall man with white hair, I think,
How do the women go?
and a white hood, and a black hood with a top knot.
Do you see who it is that torments these children now?
Yes, it is Goody Good. She hurts them in her own shape.
And who is it that hurts them now?
I am blind now. I cannot see.
Marshal, arrange to send her to Salem jail. I'll write up the minimus.
The marshal comes around the table and signals the 2 constables to escort Tituba out. He follows behind.
Hathorne says, court adjourned.
As the crowd begins to push its way out, the families of the afflicted girls rush to them to give them comfort. Now that the suspects are gone, the girls gradually calm down.
When the crowd finally exits, the magistrates and ministers gather their things.
Thomas Putnam approaches the bar and says, "Thank you, your worshipfulnesses.
It's our job, Hathorne says.
We need to be clear of these witches," Thomas says.
We will be, Corwin says. We will get to the bottom of what Tituba said.
"Thank you," Thomas says. "Now I must excuse myself and look after my family."
God be with you, Corwin says.
Hawthorne grunts in acknowledgement, picks up his papers, and heads to the aisle. Corwin scrambles to follow. The ministers trail behind, while the families of the afflicted linger, sitting with their girls in the finely quiet meeting house.
The constables escort Tituba back to Ingersoll's, where the 2 Sarahs wait under guard. The marshal guides the court officers through the crowd to the doors and back to Ingersoll's. A guard is posted at the door of Ingersoll's to keep the crowd out.
Marshal Herrick holds the door as Hathorne and Corwin enter, followed by Ezekiel Cheever and the 3 Salem ministers, Parris, Noyes, and Higginson.
Other guards line the walkway, keeping the crowd out of the tavern while the honored men enter.
Inside, a baby cries loudly.
Hathorne says, Nathaniel, see to that baby.
Nathaniel says, "She is in there with her mother nursing."
Well, send your wife in to see what she can do about that crying. Poor child needs a good woman's touch.
I'm on it, Hannah calls from across the room.
Corwin turns to Ezekiel Cheever and says, I'd like to go over your notes. I need to see if I missed anything.
Cheever hands his notes to Corwin. Of course, sir, he says.
Hathorne says, I'll be in the room, Jonathan. Join me when you can. I need to draw up the orders to commit these to jail.
Nathaniel Ingersoll says, would you like your food and drink sent to the room?
Yes, and the court will cover the food and drink for the marshal and his men, and of course, anything Jonathan would like.
Nathaniel motions to Benjamin Hutchinson, his adopted son. Benjamin walks Hathorne to the room where the magistrates left their things in the morning. As Hathorne sets up, Benjamin asks, anything particular to drink, sir?
Beer. And rum.
Yes, sir, right away.
Benjamin backs out of the room and closes the door gently.
Hathorne sits at the writing desk, going over his papers from the examinations. He takes a clean paper and writes out an order instructing the constables to take the prisoners to the locations he indicated during the meeting.
Back in Ingersoll's Great Hall, Jonathan Corwin sits with Ezekiel Cheever and the ministers. The ministers engage in hushed conversation while Corwin and Cheever revisit their notes together.
At another table, Thomas Putnam sits with his daughter Anne and the doctor's niece, Elizabeth Hubbard.
Let's go over this again, Elizabeth, Thomas says. How has Sarah Good hurt you?
Elizabeth says, 2 days ago, I saw the apparition of Sarah Good, who pinched and pricked me, and she hurt me yesterday and again today during her examination when she did hurt me and others.
Would you say that she has grievously afflicted and tortured you?
Oh, yes.
And Anne, would you say the same?
Well, I saw Sarah Good afflict me on Thursday, but I did not know her name until she told me 2 days later.
Right. She attacked you on February 25th and has continued since, most grievously torturing you.
And vehemently urging me to write in her book.
Now that's critically important to include in this deposition.
After Thomas finishes guiding the girls through their depositions against the three suspects, he is joined by Samuel Parris and Ezekiel Cheever.
Samuel says, we heard you taking those depositions, Thomas. We'd like to submit one of our own.
What about?
About the attacks we all witnessed today.
After the men confer a few minutes, Thomas writes another document. A moment later, he says, how's this?
Thomas reads the document. The deposition of Samuel Parris, aged about 30 and 9 years, testifieth and saith that Elizabeth Parris Jr. and Abigail Williams and Ann Putnam Jr. and Elizabeth Hubbard were most grievously and several times tortured during the examination of Sarah Good, Sarah Osburn, and Tituba Indian before the magistrates at Salem Village, 1st March 1692. And the said Tituba being the last of the above said that was examined, they, the above said afflicted persons, were grievously distressed until the said Indian began to confess, and then they were immediately all quiet. The rest of the said Indian woman's examination. Also, Thomas Putnam, aged about 40 years, and Ezekiel Cheever, aged about 30 and 6 years, testified to the whole of the above said, and all the three deponents aforesaid further testify that after the said Indian began to confess, she was herself very much afflicted, and in the face of authority at the same time, and openly charged the above said Good and Osburn as the persons that afflicted her, the aforesaid Indian.
Later in the afternoon, the court officials return to their homes, save the constables and the marshal who escort the prisoners. Tituba and Sarah Osburn are taken to Salem jail. Sarah Good, who will be placed in Ipswich jail, spends the night at the home of Constable Joseph Herrick.
At Herrick's house, Good and her infant daughter are guarded by Samuel Braybrook, Jonathan Baker, and Michael Dunnell. At some point in the night, the three men drift off to sleep. Late in the night, they see that Sarah Good is missing, but has left her stockings and shoes behind.
Samuel Sibley will later testify that spectral Sarah Good comes to Dr. Griggs' house this night to torment Elizabeth Hubbard.
According to Samuel's version of events, he is at the house of Dr. Griggs when Elizabeth Hubbard says, "There stands Sarah Good upon the table by you, with all her naked breasts and barefoot, bare-legged. Oh, you nasty slut!"
Samuel strikes with his staff where Elizabeth says Sarah stands, and Elizabeth Hubbard cries out, "You have hit her right across the back. You have almost killed her."
Back at Herrick's, when the men discover Sarah missing, they organize a search. Samuel Braybrook will wait at the house in case she comes in from the chilly winter night. Michael Dunnell and Jonathan Baker set out to follow her bare footprints in the mud.
But just then, Sarah Good returns of her own accord, her arm bloodied.
On March 2nd, Sarah again slips out of custody. This time she is being taken on horseback to Ipswich jail, and she jumps down 3 different times trying to get away from her escort, Samuel Braybrook. According to him, Sarah insults the magistrates and tells him she will not confess to witchcraft, unless it can be proven against her. And that isn't likely because the only real evidence against her comes from Tituba.
Also on March 2nd, Jonathan Corwin and John Hathorne question Tituba and Sarah Osburn in the Salem jail. While Corwin takes notes, Hathorne begins questioning Tituba.
What covenant did you make with that man that came to you? What did he tell you?
He tell me he God, and I must believe him and serve him 6 years, and he would give me many fine things.
How long agone was this?
About 6 weeks, a little more, Friday night before Abigail was ill.
What did he say you must do more? Did he say you must write anything? Did he offer you any paper?
Yes. The next time he come to me and showed me some fine things, something like creatures, a little bird, something like green and white.
Did you promise him then when he spake to you? Then what did you answer him?
I said, this I told him, I could not believe him God. I told him I asked my master and would have gone up, but he stopped me and would not let me.
What did you promise him?
The first time I believed him God, and then he was glad.
What did he say to you? What did he say you must do?
This he tell me, they must meet together.
When did he say you may meet together?
He tell me Wednesday next after my master's house, and then they will meet together. And that night I saw them all stand in the corner, all 4 of them, and the man stand behind me and take hold of me to make me stand still in the hall.
Where was your master then?
In the other room.
Time of night?
A little before prayer time.
What did this man say to you when he took hold of you?
He say, go to the other room and see the children, and do hurt them, and pinch them. And then I went in, and I would not hurt them a good while. I would not hurt Betty, I love Betty. But they call me and make me pinch Betty, and the next, Abigail, and then quickly went away together, and I pinched them.
Did they pinch?
No, they all looked on and see me pinch them.
Did you go into that room in your own person and all the rest?
Yes, and my master did not see us, for they would not let my master see.
Did you go with the company?
No, I stayed, and the man stayed with me.
What did he then to you?
He tell me my master go to prayer, and he read in book, and he asked me what I remember, but don't you remember anything?
Did he ask you no more but the first time to serve him or the second time?
Yes, he asked me again, and that I serve him 6 years, and he come and the next time and show me a book.
And when would he come then?
The next Friday and show me a book in the daytime, betimes in the morning.
And what book did he bring, a great or little book?
He did not show it me, nor would not, but had it in his pocket.
Did not he make you write your name?
No, not yet, for my masters and mistress called me into the other room.
What did he say you must do in that book?
He said write, and set my name to it.
Did you write?
Once I made a mark in the book and made it with red, like blood.
Did he get it out of your body?
He said he must get it out the next time he comes again. He gave me a pin, tied to a stick, to do it with, but he no let me bleed with it as yet, but intended another time when he came again.
Did you see any other marks in his book?
Yes, a great many, some marks red, some yellow. He opened his book, a great many marks in it.
Did he tell you the names of them?
Yes, of 2, no more, Good and Osburn, and he say they make them marks in that book, and he showed them me.
How many marks do you think there was?
9.
Did they write their names?
They made marks. Goody Good said she made her mark, but Goody Osborne would not tell. She was cross to me.
When did Good tell you she set her hand to the book?
The same day I came hither to prison.
Did you see the man that morning?
Yes, a little in the morning, and he tell me the magistrates come up to examine me.
What did he say you must say?
He tell nothing. If I did, he would cut my head off.
Tell us true. How many women do used to come when you ride abroad?
4 of them, these 2 Osburn and Good, and those 2 strangers.
You say that there was 9. Did he tell you who they were?
No, he no let me see, but he tell me I should see them the next time.
What sights did you see?
I see a man, a dog, a hog, and 2 cats, a black and red, and the strange monster was Osburn that I mentioned before. This was the hairy imp. The man would give it to me, but I would not have it.
Did he show you in the book which was Osburn and which was Good's mark?
Yes, I see their marks.
But did he tell the names of the others?
No, sir.
And what did he say to you when you made your mark?
He said, serve me, and always serve me. The man with the 2 women came from Boston.
How many times did you go to Boston?
I was going and then came back again. I was never at Boston.
Who came back with you again?
The man came back with me, and the women go away. I was not willing to go.
How far did you go? To what town?
I never went to any town. I see no trees, no town.
Did he tell you where the 9 lived?
Yes, some in Boston and some here in this town, but he would not tell me who they were.
The magistrates exit the jail, having a discussion on their way out.
Jonathan Corwin says, did she really say there are 9 witches?
It's a real mess. We have our work cut out for us, John Hathorne says.
We sure do. How are we going to detect them all?
God will guide us.
May he always.
The magistrates exit the jail and try to return to their lives.
It won't be easy, given what Tituba has just revealed. The thought of a whole group of witches operating together chills the men.
On March 3rd, Tituba and Sarah Osburn are questioned in jail by the magistrates. Tituba confesses once more.
Sarah Good is brought to Salem. She and Tituba are questioned again in jail on March 5th. What Sarah Good said is unknown. Tituba repeated her previous statements, confessing to witchcraft and implicating Good and Osburn.
Also on March 5th, William Allen, John Hughes, William Good, and Samuel Braybrook make statements against Sarah Good.
William Allen alleges that he had seen a mystery beast which transformed into Sarah Good, Sarah Osburn, and Tituba, and that Sarah Good had appeared in his chamber at night.
William Good says that on February 29th, he had seen a wart or a teat below his wife's right shoulder.
John Hughes says he was followed by a great white dog, which soon disappeared. Later that night, a great light and a large gray cat appeared in his chamber.
Samuel Braybrook recounts the story of Sarah Good's 3 escape attempts and the words she spoke about not confessing. He further says she had tried to take her own life that day.
On March 7th, Magistrates Hathorne and Corwin order the 3 prisoners transferred to the Boston jail. Once again, Sarah Good is to be accompanied by her infant daughter.
Thank you for joining us for this narrative history.
In this episode, the people and key events are real. Details have been embellished, but nothing has been created from the whole cloth.
The examinations are taken directly from the historical record. The depositions of Elizabeth Hubbard and Ann Putnam Jr. are paraphrased to fit conversation more naturally, and the deposition of Samuel Parris, Thomas Putnam, and Ezekiel Cheever is verbatim from the record.
All other conversation is fictionalized, as we do not have this level of detail in the existing accounts.
The introductory scene is embellished to include Jonathan Baker, who in reality did serve as one of Sarah Good's guards her first night in custody.
Let's review some facts we've covered today.
On February 29th, 4 Salem Village men traveled into Salem town and filed witchcraft complaints against Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osburn. In response, magistrates John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin wrote warrants for the arrests of the 3 women.
The following day, the women are arrested and taken to Ingersoll's Ordinary, a tavern in Salem Village, for their preliminary examinations.
Sarah Good maintained her innocence, but pointed a finger at Sarah Osburn.
Sarah Osburn maintained her innocence as well.
Tituba confessed and implicated the 2 Sarahs.
After the examinations, Sarah Osburn and Tituba were transported to the jail in Salem town.
Sarah Good, on the other hand, was sent on her way to Ipswich jail.
As it was unreasonable to reach Ipswich by nightfall, Sarah was boarded at Constable Joseph Herrick Sr.'s house and placed under the guard of 3 men, Samuel Braybrook, Jonathan Baker, and Michael Dunnell.
Here, Sarah slipped away from her guards unnoticed.
According to the account of Joseph Herrick and his wife Mary, Sarah was gone a few hours, but returned on her own with a cut on her arm.
For Samuel Sibley, this cut was the result of him striking at Sarah Good's specter after Elizabeth Hubbard pointed out its location.
So while the real Sarah roamed but found no place to go, her specter supposedly wandered to Dr. Griggs' house to pester Elizabeth Hubbard.
The next day was no less eventful for Sarah Good, as she tried 3 times to escape from her escort, Samuel Braybrook, on the ride to Ipswich.
She hopped off the horse 3 times, presumably carrying her baby daughter.
According to Braybrook, Sarah was defiant and spoke against the magistrates.
He also said she tried to take her own life, but he did not give any details.
On March 2nd, Sarah Osburn and Tituba were examined again in Salem jail. Osburn's words have not been preserved, but Tituba stirred things up by claiming there were at least 9 witches at work in the colony.
It's important to remember that Tituba is an innocent victim of the witch trials, as well as enslavement.
Her confession was a product of immense pressure and the learned behavior of accommodating her superiors' wishes.
She said what she thought the magistrates wanted to hear, based upon her understanding of English witchcraft.
According to Robert Califf in More Wonders of the Invisible World, Tituba gave an account of her own after the trials, explaining why she confessed.
In this version, Tituba blames it upon beatings she received from Samuel Parris.
This is the passage from Califf. The account she since gives of it is that her master did beat her and other ways abuse her to make her confess and accuse, such as he called, her sister witches, and that whatsoever she said by way of confessing or accusing others was the effect of such usage. On March 3rd, Sarah Osburn was again questioned in jail. Her words unfortunately do not survive.
Tituba was also examined again and stuck with her previous statements.
On March 5th, Sarah Good and Tituba were interrogated once more in the Salem jail. Sarah had evidently been transported there from Ipswich sometime after the 2nd, perhaps just for this questioning.
Again, a record of Sarah Good's words has not survived.
Finally, on March 7th, 1692, Sarah Good, Sarah Osburn, and Tituba were transferred to the jail in Boston.
Thank you again for tuning in to this 3rd episode of our Salem Witch-Hunt 101 series.
We have many, many more episodes planned in the series, so stay tuned for more.
Next time, we will cover the accusations against church members Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, as well as the charges against Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter, Dorothy.
Before you go, we have some more great content coming up in this episode.
Mary Bingham is back with A Minute with Mary.
Just because Constable Joseph Herrick arrested Sarah Osborne, Tituba, Martha Corey, and housed Sarah Good in his barn with guards watching over her, doesn't mean he necessarily thought these women were guilty for witchcraft. It's possible he could have believed these 4 women were guilty. However, Joseph had a job to do. If he failed to apprehend these women, he could have faced legal consequences himself. The question is how harshly he treated the victims upon their arrest. We don't know. However, one might surmise that Joseph either wasn't buying into these accusations across the board, hook, line, and sinker, or that he eventually had a change of heart. You see, Joseph Herrick signed the petition in defense of Rebecca Nurse. Another constable who probably wasn't buying fully into these accusations was Ephraim Wild of Topsfield, who was also a constable at that time. Most know what happened to his mother, Sarah. But again, Ephraim had a job to do, which unfortunately included arresting William and Deliverance Hobbs, Mary Esty, and later Elizabeth Howe. I can only hope these 2 men treated the victims decently upon their arrest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
And now for End Witch Hunts news. August 10th is World Day Against Witch Hunts. We will observe this day with a special podcast episode and social media posts. Visit endwitchhunts.org to learn more about this event. In September, the International Conference on Witchcraft and Human Rights, Past, Present, and Future will be held at Lancaster University in England. The theme is Implementing UN Resolution 47A, which is a resolution on the elimination of harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks. This landmark resolution paved the way forward, but advocates must follow the right path to solutions. Talks will focus on how states, organizations, communities, and individuals can find ways to respond to Resolution 47.8 in impactful ways. We need your help to get to this conference. Please consider making a donation to our nonprofit End Witch Hunts so that we can learn more about the ways in which advocates are striving to end these harmful practices, which result in torture, ostracism, psychological trauma, and even death. At this conference, we will learn from advocates in the field the world over, and we will forge relationships with individuals and organizations instrumental in this effort. The knowledge and relationships we gain will lead to additional content for Witch Hunt. Now's the time for you to get involved. How will you recognize World Day Against Witch Hunts? How will you help raise awareness of harmful practices and facilitate Resolution 47.8? Can you contribute to End Witch Hunts? Every dollar helps, and you can donate any amount you are comfortable with. Your assistance will help further our efforts to raise awareness. Please visit the link in the show notes to contribute or go to endwitchhunts.org to get involved. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Witch Hunt.
Come back next week.
Have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.